Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that fantastic welcome, Charlie. It's awesome to be here, and it's great to be back in the U.S. I'm from Denmark. I realize I sound very American. I'm not. I'm from Denmark. I live in Copenhagen. With me today are is my coworker Arlette and Patricia, who also works with me, and I'm also married to Patricia. In fact, we got married 4 years ago in Vegas by Elvis, which was awesome. We're in the Viva Las Vegas wedding chapel, and Elvis sings a couple of songs. He marries us. At one point he goes, "Okay, Alex, do you promise to always give Patricia a hunk of burning love?" And I look at Elvis and I go, It was awesome. And we're on a U.S. tour. Last week we're back in Vegas. We're visiting some of the best U.S. workplaces on this tour. In Vegas we visited Zappos. We know a lot about them. They're really cool. Then we went to Ann Arbor, visited some great companies there, including someone called Menlo Innovations and Quicken Loans in Detroit, which are really awesome. And now we're here with you guys at Next Jump. And let me say, we're huge fans. About the last name, sorry about that, Charlie, but Danish is a notoriously horrible language. In fact, there's a famous dessert in Danish called rødgrød med fløde. Yeah, you can try saying that if you want. Rødgrød med fløde. And this is so hard to pronounce that during World War II, when they were afraid that German spies were coming into Denmark, they would stop people at the border and ask them to say rødgrød med fløde. And if they could pronounce that correctly, they knew they were Danish. Wow. Yeah, anybody who could not pronounce that got sent back. Now, why do I mention that? Well, here's the thing. Doing what I do, working with happiness at work, being Danish, I have a huge advantage. Because we have a word in Danish for happiness at work. And I'll just write it down here. The word is yeah. Anybody want to take a stab at pronouncing this? This is arbejdsglæde. And yeah, I know. I swear to God, it's not a throat disease. This is a real word in Danish, okay? And this is kind of interesting because this word exists almost only in the Scandinavian languages. The Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish are very similar, and we all have this word. Arbejde means work, glæde is gladness, happiness, and this literally just means work, happiness. Now, this word exists almost only in the Scandinavian languages. I learned recently that it also exists in German, so I looked it up in a German dictionary. The word was there. And below that it said usage, very rare. I also, I spoke in Japan for the first time last year, and they told me that in Japanese there is no word for arbejdsglæde. There's a word in Japanese called karoshi, which means death from overwork. So, why do we have a word for this in Danish when the rest of the world does not? And the reason is that we have focused in Scandinavia on workplace happiness for the last 40 or 50 years. It is a perfectly normal part of Danish workplace culture is that people love what they do, that people like their jobs, that they show up and have a good time, and that they come home saying, "Wow, I've had a great day at work." This is what Danes expect. As a Dane, when you get a new job, you perfectly expect it to be a good job. This is not the case in the rest of the world. On one of my speaking trips here, a guy came up to me after my speech and said, "Well, Alex, of course I hate my job. That's why I get paid." Yeah. So that's the attitude in the rest of the world, is that people don't like their jobs. A lot of people hate their jobs and think it's natural. So that's what we do and have been doing for the last 10 years, is create happiness at work. We've worked with clients like Lego, IKEA, Hilton, IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, you name it, we've been there. Because I think people are starting to realize how important this happiness thing is. Now, before that, I was actually a software developer. I have a master's degree in computer science from the University of Southern Denmark. I was in the IT industry for software development for about 10 years, left it in 2002, and started doing this in 2003. So what I want to do in the time we have here is, first I'll give you just the very basic idea of happiness at work. What is it? Why is it so important? How do you get it? And then after that, I want to share just very briefly my own story. How did I come from software development to doing this? Because let me tell you, 15 years ago, the idea of doing public speaking would have terrified me. Oh yeah. And now that's how I make my living. So let's start. And by the way, if you have any questions at any time, put up your hand and ask, or we can save questions for the end. It's up to you.
We have a process.
You have a process, so questions at the end. Awesome.
Very good. Questions down there.
Very good. Very good. So what is happiness at work? Let's start with that. And there are many definitions, of course. Many people look at motivation or engagement or job satisfaction or, you know, workplace well-being. I want to give you our definition, which is very basic. It's about how you feel at work. It's your emotional state in the workplace, okay? When you are at work on a perfectly normal Thursday morning, how do you feel? Do you feel, you know, you're at your desk doing your job, do you feel good? Do you feel proud? Do you feel calm? Do you feel excited? Do you feel interest? How do you feel? You know, or do you have negative feelings? Do you feel stressed, frustrated, angry, sad, nervous? Now, your feelings can change, your emotional state can change very quickly, but the question is, how do you feel most of the time in the workplace? Do you spend most of your time feeling good or most of your time feeling bad? And that is very simply it. And our work is really based on, you know, how do you create workplaces where people feel good most of the time? Where you come home from work and you say, oh my God, today was a good day. I had a great time, I did some great work, I worked with nice people, and I look forward to coming to work again tomorrow. That's really what it is. It's your emotional state. That means that it's very different from workplace satisfaction. And I mention that because a lot of companies focus on workplace satisfaction. And I actually believe that is completely useless. I don't think you can get anywhere with workplace satisfaction. Workplace satisfaction is determined by things like salaries, bonuses, perks, that kind of thing. But it really has no influence on how you feel at work, you know, on whether or not you feel good in the workplace. That's why I think your emotional state, your happiness, is much more important. I want to make it very clear that I'm not talking about, you know, idyllic happiness all the time. It's not like you can be at work and feel fantastic every moment of every day. That is impossible, okay? But I'm talking about feeling good most of the time. Why is that so important? Well, you can ask yourself this. How, you know, on a day where you feel like crap at work, what does that do to you? What does that do to the quality of your work? What does that do to your energy? What does it do to your outlook on life? What does it do to the way you relate to, you know, your coworkers, your employees, if you're the manager? What does it do to the way you interact with clients? What does it do to you as a person? And I think we all know the cost. If you feel really bad in the workplace, it has a number of very, very negative effects. We also know from the research that people who hate their jobs have a much higher risk of becoming sick and a much higher risk of dying. There was a study of 22,000 American nurses that showed that nurses who hate their jobs had a much higher risk of getting cancer, much higher risk of getting heart disease, much higher risk of stress and depression, and a much higher risk of type 2 diabetes. So hating your job can make you sick, and it can ultimately kill you. On the other hand, we know that experiencing positive emotions has a lot of good effects on us. If you are in the moment, right now, you're at your desk feeling good, experiencing positive emotions, we know that makes you more productive. You get more work done. We know it makes you more creative. You have more and better ideas when you're in a good mood. We know it makes you more helpful towards other people. We know happy salespeople sell more. We know that it makes you more open towards other people, less biased, more sympathetic, more empathetic. Being happy, feeling good has a lot of positive effects, and it makes you much better at your job. So this is not some, you know, idealistic nirvana. This is actually about doing a better job, and you can do that much better when you feel good. Let's not get too positive. There are actually two things you are worse at when you're in a good mood. Does anybody know what that is? Any ideas? What are you worse at when you're in a good mood, when you're feeling good? Yeah?
Giving constructive and hard to give feedback?
Yes, exactly. If you need to be negative, if you need to be critical, and also if you need to be pessimistic, that's actually a lot harder when you're in a good mood. People who are happy can be too optimistic. They're also more gullible. It's easier to convince someone of a lie if they're in a good mood than if they're in a bad mood. So you are maybe too positive when you're in a good mood, and too gullible when you're in a good mood. That's the two things you're worse at when you're feeling good. So happy people do a much better job, and that means that happy companies make more money. And there are any number of studies that show the business value of happiness. And we know that happy workplaces have higher customer loyalty, they have higher sales, they have a better bottom line, and even a better stock price. So very simply put, happiness pays, and happy companies perform better, make more money. And now we get to what, the part that interests me the most, which is, okay, so how do you do it? How do you make people happy at work? How do you create a happy workplace? And no, it's not about salaries, it's not about perks, it's not about bonuses. You should get the salary you're worth, absolutely, because if you don't feel you're being paid fairly, that can absolutely make you unhappy. But a high salary, no matter how high, will not make you happy. Is anybody thinking, sure, but I'll try it anyway? It's not like a high salary will make you unhappy. But if that's where people look for happiness, they'll never find it. So what does make us happy at work? And we've looked at the research that's out there, and we think there are two things that really matter. We call them results and relationships. Results and relationships. Those are the two major factors that make us feel good at work, that give us positive emotions in the workplace. Results is when you do a good job. Okay? You're good at what you do, you have the skills you need to perform really well, you can reach your goals, and you can be proud of your efforts. You can see, you can go home after a day of work and you say, oh my God, I did an awesome job today. That feeling of pride that you get from doing your job well, that feels amazing. And it is a major, major source of positive emotions, of happiness at work. And not just, I'll say this, not just being good at your job, but doing something that is meaningful to you personally. Not meaningful to the company, but meaningful to you on a deep personal level. And some of the things I've seen you guys do here at NextJump absolutely address that. Stuff like Code for a Cause, where we can actually go out and help some people who need it. That is meaningful, that is purposeful. And that feeling of helping people who really need it is a major source of happiness. It is actually one of the most fundamental psychological human needs, is the need to make a positive difference. The need to know that I am needed. I help people who really appreciate my help. And you can find that in a lot of jobs. I met a young guy in Copenhagen who worked, what do you call this, sewer worker? Somebody who works in the sewers? What do you call that? Is there a term for that here? Yeah. Yeah, sanitary. Yeah. He's down in the sewers. He's up to his knees in crap every day, and it's dirty. It smells. It's kind of dangerous. But he loved his job. He absolutely loved his job. Why? Because his job is important. Would you agree? Yeah. It's kind of nice when the sewers work, right? Kind of sucks when they don't. So he knew that his efforts were really needed. He knew that his job was really important, and that made him proud and very happy, even in a job that you could call a shit job, I guess. So that's one thing that makes us really happy, results. And the other one, relationships, is absolutely vital, and it's when you feel you belong. A good relationship with your coworkers, a good relationship with your manager. If you're the manager, a good relationship with your employees, a good relationship with clients, with vendors, with partners, with whoever you come in contact with during the workday. This is absolutely vital for our well-being at work. The scariest study I have ever seen in this field, ever, is an Israeli study that showed that people with bad relationships in the workplace, people with poor social support in the workplace, over a 20-year period, had a 5 times higher mortality, a 5 times higher risk of dying over a 20-year period compared to people with good social support in the workplace. It shows how important that is. And I'm not saying that we all have to be best friends at work. That's impossible. But a good mood in the office, so you like your coworkers, they like you, you can laugh together, smile together, relax together, have fun together, and you know the people you work with, not just as coworkers, but as human beings. That is absolutely vital for our happiness at work. So results and relationships, that's where we need to focus. That is how you create a great workplace. Those are the two main things that make us feel great in the workplace. And I've seen so many great things here at NextJump that address specifically those two things. So how do you do it on a practical level? That's always my question. How do you do it in practice? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And I'd like to try that with you guys. Could you please stand up for a second? And maybe you guys, remote people as well. Excellent, very good. We're going to do a very simple exercise on praise and recognition. I think praise and recognition are fantastic. You guys have so many great awards here. But you can also do, you can praise people in so many ways. And one of my favorite ways is just to go up to someone, put up your hand, and give them a high five. Yes, and I like that because a good high five should sting a little. Yeah. So why don't we try that? Give 3 people around you a high five. Go. Yeah. Now, that's when somebody does a good job. If somebody does a great job, you can take it one step further. Then you go up to someone, you put up your hand, you give them a high five like before. Then you stick up your thumbs and you go, you rock. Try that with 3 other people. High five, you rock. You rock. Yes. Awesome, excellent, thank you. Have a seat. And I fully realize that whenever I do this exercise with a group of people, there are people in the audience thinking, oh my God, this sucks, I hate it. This is too much. And I perfectly understand, okay? This is not for everybody. This is just a fun exercise to do in a speech. If you think this is fun, if you think your coworkers would enjoy this, that's a great way to praise them. But there are so many great ways to praise people who do a good job. I mean, you have the app for it. I think that's fantastic. But, you can write people a post-it, put it on their screen saying, thank you so much for your help on my project. You're awesome. You can write them an email. You can praise people in meetings. You can just go up and tell them they're doing a good job. You can bring them candy. There are so many great ways to praise people. But a lot of people don't. For some reason, a lot of people, in a lot of workplaces, people get no praise. In a lot of workplaces, the rule is that, as long as you don't hear anything, you're doing fine. I think that is a shame. So what is a way that you could praise, people around you that would be fun for you and fun for them? It's such a simple thing to do, actually does make a difference. And some of the other things we teach people that, that create results in relationships are something very basic. Say good morning when you come to work in the morning. Do you guys do that? Yeah? It's really important. It's such a simple thing. It actually makes a difference that you actually acknowledge the presence of your coworkers. Hey, good morning. If it's Monday, how's your weekend? That kind of thing. We talk about random acts of workplace kindness, where you do something nice for someone else out of the blue to make them happy. It could be tiny little things that make a difference. Bring some. If you're going to get yourself a cup of coffee, bring someone else a cup of coffee that didn't ask for it. Here, I brought you a cup of coffee too. Can make people ridiculously happy. They put people in they tested this. They put people in a brain scanner, an fMRI scanner, where you can see activity in the brain live as it happens. Fascinating. And then they did, different experiments on these people. And one of the experiments was giving them little rewards. And then you could see the activity, the blood flow in the pleasure center of the brain, something called the nucleus ambens, the reward center, basically. And they could see that when people got a reward they expected, they became a little happier. There was a little bit of blood flow in that center. If people got a reward out of the blue, something they did not expect, they became about 3 times as happy. 3 times as much blood flow in that center of the brain. So that shows something like the tiny little extra things you do to surprise someone else actually has a huge effect on people. I'll just mention one final thing that works really well is remember just before you go home from work, you can try that for the next 2 weeks maybe. Just before you go home from work, make a list of 3 good things that happened to you that day. 3 things that made you happy, 3 things that felt good. And they've actually studied that. It turns out that if you do that for 2 weeks, you are measurably happier for 3 months after, because it trains your mind to focus more on the positive. Normally, we are better at remembering bad experiences. So those are some of the very, very simple things that we teach companies and people and managers and employees and everybody that actually make a workplace happier, because it creates results and relationships. I do not want to trivialize this. It's not like you can go into a horrible, toxic, awful workplace and make people say good morning and all will be fine. That is not going to work. But the things we need to address are results and relationships. That is how you create a good workplace. And imagine the absence of results and the absence of relationships. Imagine going to work every day knowing that you will not do a good job. You will never reach your goals. You will never complete that project. It's not going to happen. And, by the way, everybody hates you. Yeah, that is pretty much the recipe for unhappiness right there. And results and relationships are definitely the source of 80 to 90% of our positive emotions in the workplace. That's where we get most of our happiness at work. So that was very briefly, what is happiness at work? Positive emotions, more than negative emotions. Why is it so important? Well, it affects us on a deep personal level. And it affects our work performance, and happy workplaces make more money. And how do you become happy at work? Results and relationships. Yeah. And think about this for a moment. Think about, where will you spend most of your life? They did some time studies to figure out what people spent their entire lifetime on. That's 73 years on average for men and 76 for women. And it turns out that the number one thing we spend time on over an entire lifetime is sleep, and number two is work. Number two is work. Yeah. So that shows you how much of our lives it takes up. And if you go to work every single day and you hate it, and you don't do the best possible job you could have, that is just a massive waste of time. It's just a massive waste of life. Cool. So, yeah, I know. Cool. Yeah. And also, by the way, being happy at work also makes us happy in life. There's a massive relationship between those two. So what about my story? As I said, I used to be in software development. When I grew up, my future was decided for me when I turned 13. Because on my 13th birthday, I got exactly what I wanted, which was a Sinclair ZX81 home computer. Has anybody here ever heard of that? Yeah, a few people. Awesome. Yes. This was a little black plastic box. It had 1 kilobyte of RAM, not a megabyte, 1 kilobyte of memory. I actually bought the memory expansion pack, which had 16 kilobytes of memory. And I was like, that is more memory that you could use in a lifetime. And I wrote little programs on that. So when it was time to go to university, I studied computer science, came out of there, became a programmer. And then in 1997, I co-founded an IT company together with two friends. We called it Enterprise Systems. And we did software, big software projects for clients in Denmark, mostly in Copenhagen. And when we founded the company, our number one goal was to make it a happy workplace. And it absolutely was. We loved it working there. Company grew to 5 people, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people. And suddenly, I get bored. We've been running the company for 3 years. And I'm like, okay, this is comfortable, this is nice, this is safe, we have the same clients. I felt like we were doing the same projects for the same clients in the same way, only more. And I got bored. And I started coming up with ideas that I presented to the company and saying, let's do this, let's try this, let's, focus on this over here, try something new. And every time the answer was the same, no. Everything is fine the way we are. There's no, let's not rock the boat, let's not change anything. And I grew more and more frustrated. And talk about unhappiness at work. For a year, I was miserable in the workplace. I felt neglected. I felt overlooked. I felt ignored. I felt like I was not being taken seriously. I had all these awesome ideas for things we could do, and every time they just got shot down. And you remember that period. I was not fun to be around for that year. I'm normally a pretty cheerful guy. I'm normally quite creative. During that year, I was miserable. I was irritable. I'd be at work and I could not get a new idea to save my life. Honestly, I felt like crap. Every time somebody else presented an idea to me, I was completely negative. I was like, that sucks. That'll never work. I became pessimistic. I became really, really tired. Normally I'm a pretty high energy person. During that year I had no energy. And I vividly remember coming to work in the morning, most mornings, and first thing I would do, I'd sit down at my computer, look at my watch, and calculate when I could go home. Yeah, 8 hours from now, that's there. Yeah, that's when I can leave. It sucked. It was the worst period of my life without comparison. And why didn't I leave? Why didn't I leave? I should have. Looking back, I absolutely should have left the company. And the only reason I didn't was money. If I owned a third of the company, if I would have left the company, they'd have had to buy me out at a sort of fairly low price. And I had an idea that maybe a year later we'd sell the company. And if I cashed out then, and then a year later they sold at a much higher price, I would lose this much money. So I stuck around for that extra year, and I can tell you without a doubt, it was not worth it. Not worth it. We finally did sell the company. I could cash out. I could quit. And at that point, I was pretty much at a low point in my career. So what I did, very consciously at the time, I decided I'll give myself breathing room. I'll give myself some time to not think about what I'm doing next, to just decompress. That was in 2002. As it happened, Patricia had lost her job, had quit her job at a company in Denmark, so we both had time off. It was very uncharacteristically a beautiful summer in Copenhagen. Normally the weather is not that nice, so we could really enjoy some time together. And I could decompress from that experience. I had a lot of negative energy, I had a lot of bitterness about the way things had worked out that I needed to let go of. And then I remember the exact moment this happened. We were at the beach. I'm lying on a towel. I'm reading a book, and suddenly, out of the blue, the idea comes to me: Alex, you're going to make people happy at work. And that's how it happened. I was like, cool idea. How? I had no idea. I had never done public speaking. I had never done consulting work except for software development consulting. But the idea just gripped me so strongly. I had to do this. So I started talking to a lot of people, researching all of this, reading a lot of books about happiness at work, psychology, organizational theory, everything I could get my hands on. And basically started the company in 2003, and we had our first paying customer on May 1st, 2003. And it's been quite a challenge. There's so much that I've learned. There's so much that I have learned that was completely new to me, both professionally but also personally. And looking back at this, I can say that it's been really hard, but it's been totally worth it. Going into something that is this different from what I did before. I could have found another software development company, and that would have been fairly safe and fairly well known. But going into this instead, and basically spending time learning completely new things, completely new skills, has been absolutely fantastic, and I've enjoyed it so much. It's not been easy. It took at least 2 years before we actually got traction in the market, before I actually had a steady flow of customers. In the beginning, it was like a customer a month, then maybe a customer a week. Now we're very well known in Denmark. If you Google this word, arbejdsglæde, you will find us. We own that word. Yeah. So, and I think the biggest challenge for me has been in let's see, it's probably been in letting go and accepting that this sometimes has to move faster than I'm comfortable with. That on occasion things go right now things are going really fast, and we are kind of struggling to keep up, which is good, because that's when you get somewhere in a hurry. That's where you get somewhere fast. That's when you achieve something really cool. So yeah, tough couple of years, and then this idea really got some traction. This really got accepted, and now we have cool clients all over the world. We've spoken in 31 countries. In fact, I flew here from Israel, from Tel Aviv, where I did a speech last week, and this actually just happened yesterday. I was booked to do a speech in February in Antigua in the Caribbean. Yes. My job is awesome. So that's the journey from being quite an introverted IT software developer with the typical software developer skill set to doing this and doing it all over the world for big corporate clients. It's been awesome. It's been tough and awesome.
Fantastic. So